Oh, we're so happy to be doing this again. All right, you have some questions and Mary has the answers.
Yes, she does. And this has become a popular part of the show. And it makes sense, Mary, because everyone has weather questions. And if you're like me, you just don't know the answers. I mean, really to some basic things.
Yeah. So the two questions I picked too, they kind of have to deal with the weather we're seeing right now. So it'll be fun.
Yeah.
Okay, so first up, Josh, he wants to know what causes hail and even during the summertime.
Yeah, so that's usually when we see a lot of it, but whenever we have it in the winter, do you ever hear say grapple?
Yes.
Those are little soft pellets. Okay, so what hail is, it's basically just frozen chunks of rain that fall from the sky. And it all has to do with updrafts. It has to do with how many times that's getting carried up into the air. So I have a nice little graphic on how hail forms if we want to take that. So really, when we have the updrafts, they start as little, very tiny ice balls in the sky and in the clouds, and then it gets tossed around by the updrafts.
Ping-ponging up
Yes, and something really fascinating too. So they get tossed around, obviously, by the strong winds, and then basically, the bigger they are, it's just how many times it's been traveling up into those stronger winds. Eventually, they get too heavy and they fall, depending on how strong the updraft is. So something interesting about that, you know how we measure golf ball sized hail, we measure, pea sized hail. We can tell how big the hail is going to be based on how strong the updraft is. So if you were to cut a hailstone in half and you see the rings, if you count the rings inside, that's how many times that has traveled up into the atmosphere and back up into the atmosphere. So
that's so crazy. Well, and last week we were talking too about how much colder the atmosphere is. So even on a really hot day when we have a strong thunderstorm, you can still see hail.
Did you watch the movie Twisters?
I haven't.
Yeah, I did.
Okay, so do you know when they're driving in the car and they're like, we've got grapefruit?
Right.
That's like the biggest you can get, right? And that's very common with a tornado because you have those strong updrafts, you have the strong winds, the rotation. So yeah, that's like a meteorologist like, oh my gosh, grapefruit size hail.
Because it's really, you
really
probably
big.
don't see it very often either.
So that's something cool. It's fun.
We talk about dew point a lot, and I feel like this comes into play when we start to talk about how comfortable it is outside. So what is dew point and how does this actually affect us? And this question came in from Diane.
You know I love my muggy meters.
Yes, you do.
Okay, so it's basically how it's going to feel on your skin as you're heading out. So it's the temperature and the dew point. It's how much moisture there is in the atmosphere. So when the temperature is close to the dew point, when they're exactly the same, then it can't hold any more moisture. Then it's reached its point of saturation. But there's actually a chart. Like, we don't make up these numbers. We're not like, hey, it's going to feel like this. So this is actually this week. It's going to be super humid in the 90s, but we have our dew points into the 70s. When you get to the 70s, even 60s, it feels sticky, muggy, oppressive. But here's what's interesting. So there's a feels like chart.
Right,
yes, it's a lot of numbers. Yes, so there's a chart. So if the dew point is 72 and the air temperature is 88, it's going to feel like 95 because that's what it is. That's the air temperature. So there is a rhyme to the reason. So, basically the air starts to sweat if you think about it that way. So the more the temperature and dew point, when they're close together, the more humid it's going to feel. So also, whenever we talk about like foggy mornings, when we talk about fog is basically a low cloud to the ground. So when the temperature and dew point are close together, you're going to get fog. Because
so you can predict a foggy day because of that.
Easily, the overnight hours, because if we have a low of 70, it's hot and it's sticky outside. The dew points are in the 70s, you're going to get some patchy fog, patchy dense fog.
I tell you what, people think that this is just a silly thing, like how the weather's really nice today, but weather impacts all of us. It's just not just a conversation starter. I think it really does affect us. It's so interesting.
We'll have to dig into wind chill too next.
That's good. And it's very
There's also a chart for that. So
I love that. It's very straightforward.
Well, I know a lot of people are going to be wondering about their commute home today, maybe soccer practice tonight too. So what's the one word viewers should keep in mind?
Let's go with oppressive.
Oh, good. Oppressive. Fun. Back to the
Sounds like a good time.
Back to the monkey meter.
Yes.